tell me about your sales training seminars.
Well, my sales training seminars are pretty basic. I try to tailor them to the person who's writing me the check. So the first thing I do is ask that person what his or her objectives are. Do they feel like they need to have their salespeople get really more serious about activity, sales activity, loading the pipeline so you have something that comes out the other end? And how do you do that? What kind of disciplines are necessary? Do they need to learn how to present more, close more, handle objections, follow up, build rapport? And those are the kind of things that I focus on in a sales seminar, and I try to get a lot of participation. One of the things I think is important is to ask the participants what they would like to take away from the seminar, what they'd like to get out of it. And and that usually coincides in most cases, in the largest part, with what the person who owns the resource, the business, is trying to accomplish. Most experienced salespeople really know what they're supposed to do. But unfortunately, they don't do it. I mean, everyone wants to go to heaven. No one wants to die. And so it takes a lot of effort, a lot of self-discipline, courage to be successful in the sales arena.
And so you've been selling for how many years?
40 years.
So talk about why 40 years matters compared to 1 year.
Doesn't necessarily. It's interesting that you mentioned that, Dave, because I was on a plane a number of years ago coming back from a 3-day seminar I did in New Jersey for a long-distance company. And we were going to the Bay Area, and I sat next to a nice gentleman, a little bit older than me, who had come up through the sales ranks and was high up with a Fortune 500 company. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you're very outgoing, and so am I. So I struck up a conversation with this guy. I'm really curious to know about people. And he found out that I had been in selling, and we had a really lively conversation. We had a lot in common. And what happens typically in these situations is at the end of the flight, you don't even know the person's name. Right. But you've had this intimate conversation with somebody that has something in common with you. And it's like, well, I'm Gerry. Here's my card. Will I ever see you again? So he asked me towards the end of the conversation. He said, "Well, how many years of experience do you have?" And at that time, it was 30 years of sales experience. And he says, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Well, it might not be exact to the month, but yeah, about 30 years." He said, "Are you really sure?" And I started to get marginally irritated, and I was going to say, "Hey, dude, I can do the math, And he said, "Are you sure that you've had 30 years sales experience or 1 year repeated 30 times?" And that smacked me right between the eyes. And so one of the things I've really tried to focus on pretty much throughout my sales career is growing and learning new techniques and trying things out that I learned from people who are successful in that arena.
So that speaks to being a lifelong learner.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in business right now. I own a company. I'm on the board of several other companies, and I owe that, by the way, to having gotten noticed because I was good at selling.
So what is it what are the characteristics of a lifelong learner besides curiosity, a longing to build a deeper knowledge base? Are there other attributes, Gerry, that kind of stand out to you?
Well, I think curiosity is a big one. You just mentioned that. I would underline that 3 or 4 times, and you have to have a commitment to keep growing. My philosophy about growth is that you can't tread water. You can't float in life. You're either growing or you're dying, and the same in a business. And the same with the person, spiritually, physically, in every way. You just can't. It's like being in the middle of a lake, and you're floating, and at some point, if you don't start swimming in some direction, you're going to drown. So I've always had a passion for growth. And I've always challenged myself to do things that scare me.